Let me paint a picture for you. It's 2:47 on a Tuesday. You're in a glass-walled conference room on the 14th floor. The air smells like stale coffee and anxiety. Your boss just laid out the quarterly numbers and they're not great. Then someone, let's call him Mark, says, "Look, we could just tell the client we've already completed phase 2. They won't check for another month. By then, we'll have caught up." And silence. A few people nod slowly. Someone laughs nervously. Another person says, "Well, everyone bends to the truth a little to protect the team." Then your boss looks directly at you. What do you think? Here's what no one tells you about that moment. You don't build integrity in those 3 seconds. You don't learn character. You don't suddenly become brave. You just reveal what's already there. Because integrity isn't a choice that you make when the pressure hits. It's the sum of 1,000 small choices that you've made long before that Tuesday at 2:47 in the afternoon. It's a phone call you returned when it was easier to ghost. It's the mistake you admitted when no one would have found out. It's the promise you keep, even though keeping it costs you sleep, money, or pride. And in that conference room, with everyone watching and the quarterly bonus on the line, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your training, your character training. So what do you say to your boss? What do you say to Mark? What do you say to yourself the night on the drive home? That's what we're talking about today. Building unshakable integrity and character. Not for the applause, not for the promotion, but so that when the 2:47 moment comes, you don't have to think. You just are. We're going to dive into that on this episode of Engage and Inspire. Welcome back, leaders. Welcome back to Engage and Inspire. I am your host, Scott Liles. Now let's get to work. I want to start with an analysis that I read that stopped me cold. Researchers at Florida State University and the University of Iowa analyzed 665 correlations across multiple studies on leadership and integrity. What were their findings? Well, they found that integrity isn't just a nice-to-have trait. It's one of the most reliable predictors of leadership effectiveness, employee satisfaction, and organizational performance. Teams led by honest, ethical leaders tend to outperform, trust more, and burn out less. Now here's another one. A separate analysis of 104 studies on integrity tests published in the Journal of Applied Psychology found that integrity scores were consistently linked to job performance, training performance, and lower rates of counterproductive work behavior. The validity estimates were not small. For predicting counterproductive work behavior, integrity tests showed correlations as high as 32% when using objective records, and even higher when using self-reports. But here's the problem. We treat character like a light switch, something we flip on when things get hard. But that's not how it works. Character is a muscle, and most people are walking around with integrity atrophy because no one's training them. But today, we fix that. So we're going to cover a few pillars on this episode, and the first one is win the private battle before the public one shows up. And this is about self-awareness. You've probably heard the claim that 95% of people think they're self-aware, but only 10 to 15% actually are. That statistic comes from organizational psychologist Tasha Urich's research. Her team studied thousands of people across multiple industries and found that while the vast majority of us believe we have clear self-insight, the reality is far different. So why does this matter for integrity? Well, because you cannot act with integrity if you don't honestly see yourself, see your patterns, your excuses, your blind spots. Research published in Current Psychology in 2023 confirmed that structured self-reflection and insight are measurable individual differences, and that people who score higher on insight scales show different psychological profiles than those who don't. So what does that mean? In other words, self-awareness isn't mystical. It's measurable and it's trainable. So here's 3 tips for you. Tip 1 is the 5-second rule for small truths. When you catch yourself about to take a shortcut, rounding a number, skipping a detail, saying, I'll do it later when you know you won't, pause for 5 seconds. Ask yourself, if this action were printed on the front page of tomorrow's newspaper, would I be embarrassed? If yes, then don't do it. Tip number 2 is the invisible camera trick, and I've done this one and it works. Place a small sticky note on your monitor or mirror somewhere on your desk that says recording. It's not actually recording, but your brain will start acting as if someone is watching. This leverages the observer effect. People change behavior when they believe they're being observed. Use it on yourself. Tip 3, the integrity log. For 1 week, keep a private log. Every night, write down one moment where you could have compromised, but you didn't, and one moment where you did compromise, even slightly. There's no judgment. It's just data. After 2 weeks, review it. You'll see your weak spots clearly, and that's where real growth begins. Pick one behavior this week: returning the shopping cart, being honest in a self-review, or not exaggerating a story. Do it every single time, no exceptions. That's reps on the integrity muscle. Now, the second pillar is called unshakable integrity, means saying no to the right things, even when yes is easier. So here's the fascinating finding from the Journal of Management. Researchers analyzed data from 37,366 intra-organizational relationships across 150 samples. That is a big data set. They compared 2 types of trust: competence-based trust, which is believing someone has the skills to do what they say, and integrity-based trust, which is believing someone has the honesty and character to keep their word. So what were the results? Integrity-based trust was 10 times more effective at reducing transaction costs than competence-based trust. So let that sink in. Being skilled is good, but being trustworthy is 10 times better for getting things done efficiently. Now, why does this matter? Because when you trust someone's integrity, you don't have to consistently verify. You don't need contracts for every handshake. You don't waste energy watching your back. So tip 1 is the commitment buffer. Before saying yes to anything important, use this script. Let me check my current commitments and I'll get back to you in 2 hours. That 2-hour buffer stops you from people-pleasing your way into a broken promise. Tip 2 is the integrity audit. Now, you do this monthly. Once a month, review every open promise you've made: work, family, friends, anything. Categorize them in green, yellow, red. Green is your commitment is on track. Yellow, you're at risk of missing that commitment, so go ahead and tell them now. And red, it's going to be broken. Renegotiate or apologize right now, today. Most people only track tasks. People with character track their word. And then tip 3, the small no warm-up. If you struggle to say no, practice on low-stakes things like, no, I don't want ketchup. No, I can't chat right now. No, that time doesn't work for me. Each small no builds the spine for the big no when it matters. Here's a quick little challenge. Identify one commitment you're already going to break this week. Contact that person today and say, I committed to X, but I can't deliver. Here's what I can do instead. That single act of honesty will shock them in a good way. Okay, let's take a quick break to recommend something that my wife absolutely loves. She spent years in boring, ill-fitting activewear that made her feel fine. Not great, just fine. Then she found Wear Playground at wearplayground.com, and her whole confidence shifted. Playground makes luxurious activewear for women Bold prints, sustainable fabrics, limited edition collections designed in New York City and made in LA. My wife says it actually fits, breathes, and looks beautiful, whether she's at the gym or running errands and grabbing a cup of coffee. Google reviewers agree, with one reviewer saying, "Finally, activewear that makes me feel unstoppable." So if you're tired of bland workout gear, or if you're a guy wanting to get something great for the woman in your life, head to wearplayground.com. I got you 20% off any product, exclusive to my listeners. So use my promo code HELM, that's HELM, at checkout. So full disclosure, I do earn a commission on this when you use the code, but that supports the show. And honestly, I only recommend what actually works in my own home. So check them out at wearplayground.com. Okay, pillar 3 is the mirror never lies. This is where you learn to look at yourself honestly. Now, you remember that self-awareness statistic from earlier, the one that stated only 10 to 15% of people actually demonstrate true self-awareness despite 95% believing they do. That gap between perception and reality is where integrity breaks down. So here's what the research on self-reflection actually shows. A study published in Europe PMC found that of all the self-awareness variables, so rumination, reflection, and insight, the insight subscale was the only statistically significant positive predictor of psychological well-being and life satisfaction. Not rumination, which is obsessing over problems, not aimless reflection, insight, the ability to see yourself clearly and act on that understanding. So tip 1 is the weekly mirror review, and it takes about 10 minutes. So every Friday, stand in front of a mirror. Yes, physically stand in front of the mirror. Ask 3 questions out loud. If you need to pause this episode and get a pen and paper to write it down, do so. Or you can always come back and listen to it again. So first question is, where did I compromise this week? Question 2, where did I show courage? And question 3, what will I do differently next week? Speaking answers aloud changes your brain's relationship with truth. Silent reflection is easy. Verbal reflection is accountability. Tip 2, the third person pause. When you're about to make a decision with ethical weight, pause and ask, would I advise my best friend to do this? If the answer is no, then you already know what to do. Tip 3, find a character check partner. Choose one person you trust, not a cheerleader, but someone who will tell you the hard truth. Give them permission to ask you one hard question each week. Where did you fall short on integrity? No defensiveness is allowed. Research from the Journal of Management supports this approach. The best predictor of future integrity-based behavior is past behavior, but not what people say about themselves. As organizational psychologists Robert Hogan and Rob Kaiser have argued, the best way to assess a leader's integrity is to talk to the people who work for them. Ask questions like, does this person keep their promises? Do they own up to their mistakes? Do they treat people with respect when no one is watching? Reputation is not self-perception. It's the gold standard for integrity. So here's a quick little short story about something that happened to me early in my career. So I took a promotion I knew came with a small ethical compromise hiding a product defect. So I told myself it was strategic. Company had a reason to do it, so I went along with it. 6 months later, I couldn't look myself in the mirror. I eventually confessed to the client. We lost the contract. I lost the promotion, but I got myself back. And I've never traded self-respect for a title since. So this week, ask your character check partner, what's one blind spot you see in me? Don't explain. Don't defend. Just say, thank you. That's the fastest path to unshakable character. All right, now before we wrap up, I want to share one more piece of research because it changes how we see trust in others. Harvard Business School professor Julian Zlotov conducted a series of 5 experiments with 3,817 participants studying how we perceive integrity in others. The findings published in Psychological Science were surprising. When participants thought someone cared deeply about an issue, even if they disagreed with that person's stance, they rated that person as having more integrity than someone who was apathetic or fence sitting. In fact, participants gave high caring targets who disagreed with them similar integrity ratings as low caring targets who agreed with them. So, what does this mean? Caring about something, standing for something, signals integrity. People who flip flop or stay neutral to avoid conflict are actually perceived as less trustworthy, even when you agree with their final position. So here's the application: don't hide your convictions to be liked. Standing for something with genuine care builds trust, even with people who disagree with you. All right, so here's what I want you to walk away with. You will face your 2:47 p.m. moment. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next year. It may be in a conference room, in your own kitchen, in the silence of your own car after a long day. In that moment, you won't rise to the occasion. You'll fall to the level of your training. So start training today. Do the small things. Return the cart. Keep the small promises. Say the awkward no. Look in the mirror and tell yourself the truth, even when it stings. Because unshakable integrity isn't about being perfect. It's about being whole. It's about being the same person in public and in private, under pressure and at peace, winning and losing. And that person, they don't need to explain themselves. They don't need to defend themselves. They just are. So pick one of the tips from this episode, just one. Write it down. Do it every day for 7 days. Then reach out to me. Tell me what changed. Tell me how you feel. I want to thank you for spending time with me on this episode of Engage and Inspire. If this episode landed, share it with someone whose character you quietly admire. Also, don't forget to get your copy of How Can I Help, as well as leadership hacks that actually work. They're available on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles. Until next time, remember, keep engaging and keep inspiring. Take care.